guys, welcome back to the next lecture regarding Bootstrap and our first template. So let's get stuck in. So let's get over to the Bootstrap website and jump onto the CSS tab. And essentially what this page is telling you is the foundation of Bootstrap. So it's telling you that the HTML5 is needed for the template. Otherwise, you could run into some issues with not using it because you'll be using HTML4. The next option is the mobile first design, which most modern websites are built upon. It's basically telling you that we need to use the meta tag for the viewport. That's pretty much it. And the next one is the typography and the links. Don't really need to pay much attention. It's just giving you a little bit of information. Normalize. Not sure if you've come across this before. Normalize is a CSS project that was created by someone to essentially create a CSS basic template that will give the same stylings across majority of browsers. So in some browsers, a style might appear different in, say, for example, Internet Explorer than in Chrome or Firefox, or vice versa. So they created this CSS to basically create a foundation that all browsers basically are the same styles, and that's pretty much it. So let's get started now. So as we can see here, they've got something called containers. Okay, so containers is essentially going to tell the browser how to display the page. So when you're using a normal container, so like this, as you can see here, it's for a responsive fixed width container. So what does that mean? Well, let's test it. So if we come into here, and actually we'll keep our header, okay, and do a container class. Okay, let's indent this. Let's get a bit tidy from the start. There we go. Right, now let's save that. Let's see what happens when we go over to our template. As you've noticed, the hello world text has instantly jumped from over the left hand side straight to the middle. So what's happening here? So let's have a look. So if we go into inspect element, we go into our body and we go to our container. As you can see here, the body is actually central. So it's basically telling the browser that you want everything to be with the 1170 pixel. So you're ignoring the white space to the left and right. So everything is in a very basic central container. So if we look at the actual CSS here, as you can see here, they've created in the CSS that from a desktop point of view, that the width is going to be that many pixels. And then they've got a media query to say on the minimum width, it'll always use this amount of pixels. Okay, and then when we start going down a screen size, so let's do that now. What we're using here. So here we go. So we're now using the 992 minimum width pixels. So we're 970 pixels. Okay, and then we've got the smaller one. So let's break this down a bit more. And should find the breakpoint. There we go. So let's scroll up. That should have had a breakpoint there. I think it's because. Yeah, hold on. Let's pop this up to make it a bit more readable. Okay. Pseudo elements we can close. I should have had a breakpoint there. Let's try that again. So there's our minimum 992. There we go. I went too small, that's why. So essentially on the media query, we've got a minimum width of 668. Now, just to give you a little bit of an insight onto the mobile first responsive design and what just happened with regards to this disappearing. If you notice, when I get smaller, that will disappear. Yeah. So the reason that's disappearing is because by default in the CSS, it is set to be this screen wide. This screen wide and less. Okay? Anything more than that is when the media queries then pop up and start being used. So that's mobile first. You always start small and get bigger. Okay, let's jump on, right? So let's go down again. And then you can see here we actually reached the class container. So we've got padding right, left, padding right and padding left. 15 pixels, 15 pixels, and then you got margin right and margin left auto. So that's essentially saying that with margin auto and margin auto left and right, you're basically telling the browser that it's going to be 0 pixels auto, which then means center, and then they're just adding a little bit of padding in the container. So if we actually just do this, see here the purple is the padding. So as the screen gets smaller, it knows that there should be padding there, and it won't go any closer to the left hand side of the screen. And then eventually, as we get so small, we still have the padding, and it's always going to be that size. Yeah, so that is essentially the container. Now, if we go back to the Bootstrap website, we can see here they also have one called container fluid. Okay, so it says use container fluid for a full width container spanning the entire width of your viewport. Okay, well let's have a look at that, see what that does. Okay, we've refreshed. Let's close that because we opened the wrong one. Now then, you'll notice that the hello world has actually gone back to the left hand side. You might be thinking, okay, well that didn't work. No, it didn't. To a certain extent, but yes it did. So what's happened is the container fluid has gone from using pixels to percentages. So what the browser is now being told from a design perspective is that, sorry guys, let's try that again. Right, from a design perspective, it's now being told to use percentage. So let's open this up. Okay, not used to using only one screen. Right, so let's open this up. So see if we can find. It should be somewhere along the lines a width of 100%. Should be here somewhere. Okay. That should be showing a style. Okay. It's not showing it on there, but essentially the container fluid is using width 100%. So what that's telling the browser is to use every possible bit of white space on the page. And then all it's done is add padding right and left 15 pixels and then auto margin left. So that's basically telling the browser that use 100% of the white space with 15 padding and then have that particular container automatically calculate the distance between the margin left and the margin right. So that's essentially the container. So what happens is that the difference between container and container fluid is that with the fluid, everything's gonna kind of resize based on the content on the page, whereas with container, it set the width permanently, so that it's always going to detect the amount of content and then kind of manually do the sizes using media queries, whereas Container Fluid, because it's using percentages, will kind of do it for you to a certain extent. It will try and pick up the amount of content and then kind of break down based on the screen size. I'll show you what I mean later on in another episode, but that's essentially your containers. Next, we're going to go on to actually start putting content on the page using rows and columns. So I'll see you then.